Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the ADEC, the Acelith Design Endurance Championship. Today marks round 4 and the series heads to Croatia at the Dragon Trail Seaside Circuit. Perhaps not a real life circuit, but based on a real world location and one of, if not the best track for great action and fighting throughout the field. I'm your host, Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and welcome back after what was a thrilling round 3. Now tonight we're going to see even more drivers in the field. Last time out it was a Group 1 race at the Autopolis Short Circuit, which saw the win go to JJ Balding, with a very close finisher behind in the form of Kumaru75. We're following the Tier 2 guys as always in the ADEC. And for those who are unaware, this is a championship which is supported by Acelith Design, sponsored by Acelith Design I should say, a company which focuses on making unique designs for steering wheels in sim racing, such as the TGT, the Thrustmaster TGT, or the Logitech and also the Fanatec equivalents. Now over to Murkov. Now Murkov is an interesting driver here. The point about this is that Murkov is a guest driver for today, so not normally racing in the championship, so anywhere he finishes today it will not affect the driver's standing or the points attributed to other drivers. Murkov is racing as a guest in memory of his nan. Now the wonderful thing about the ADEC is the fact that it's a very close-knit community of drivers, very competitive drivers but also very close-knit, and the point of the matter is that Murkov and his brother Rocker, who's going to be the guest driver in Tier 3 tonight, and both of them are taking part in memory of their nan, and you can see they're running a specially themed livery. And if we can try and get a little bit of camera on the bonnet of the car, you're going to see right in the centre of the bonnet there, it's a bit difficult to see on the camera, but you can see the word Nana with a rose down the middle of it, and that is in memory of his nan, and he's racing for her tonight. Now that means there's going to be a special event at the start of qualifying. As you can see in the chat there from Kamaru, what is going to happen at the start of qualifying, whereas it would normally be a 15-minute qualifying session, we're going to be running a 20-minute session where all the drivers are going to come out onto the field, park behind Murkov in a 2x2 fashion, and then they're going to do a slow lap around the circuit as a memorial service for his nan, just going down very gradually, and once they've completed the lap, all drivers will return to the pits or either commence straight into qualifying. So it's a nice way, and this just goes to show in these difficult times at the moment, what with COVID-19 and of course the loss of loved ones as they depart from life, that at the same time we're able to come together and remember those we love. And it's the communities we race with and enjoy our hobbies with that really matter in these difficult times. So good luck to you tonight, Murkov. Hope you have a good result and have fun. So what I'm going to do at this point, as the drivers come out onto the grid, we're just going to watch them come out to the grid, and then I'm going to be silent for the duration of the memorial service, as I think it's right to show our respect. We're going to remove the HUD, and we're just going to follow on the front of what will be... 1 second. We're just going to follow on the front of Makov's car, and let the drivers get underway. Okay, and I believe with Murkoff coming in, that signals the end of the tribute. Rather fitting one. And with that, the drivers are now going to get underway and get out there on the circuit. So, what to think about in qualifying here? We're just going to flick through the field, with Wilkinator leading the field away, it would seem, on the first qualifying lap. The thing to look out for here is that whilst everyone's going to be running the super soft tyre, because remember, everyone's got the option of the racing super soft all the way through to the racing hard, the super soft tyre is going to be good for probably 1 to 2 laps, because we have a tyre wear multiplier of ×5 and a fuel multiplier of ×2. Don't think those are actually set for the qualifying itself. Actually, my apologies, they're not. But the thing to note is on the super soft, the drivers are going to push the tyre incredibly hard here. And they're going to have to go all out in order to get the best possible lap time. We're probably looking at lap times here coming into the region of the mid 145. That's probably going to be the target lap for a good number of drivers. And I reckon pole could be as low as a low 145. Probably a 145.2. But it will all come down to how brave the drivers are through the chicanes. Now, one thing that's probably not obvious when you look at that track map in the top right corner of your screen, as Wilkinator goes flat through the chicane of death there for the first time of asking in qualifying, is that this track has 3 very unique chicanes, one's at each sector. That was the chicane for sector 3. But you'll notice that turns 2 and 3 form a low speed chicane in sector 1. Meanwhile, turns what would be 7 through to 9 form a high speed chicane, and then there's another high speed chicane in sector 3, but it's a very tight one. As Wilkinator sets the pace with the initial lap of a 146.1, and we flick over to JC, who follows in the vantage with a 147.0, and then Sir Bottiger, well, 145.2 already. Somebody has made it right onto the expectation, but Stephen 25.70 coming in with 145.1. I reckon we're going to be looking at some drivers here dropping into the 144s, ladies and gentlemen, because that is a very tight set of starting laps for the guys, with 3 drivers hitting the low 145s immediately. Goodness me, they're all going for it straight away. Looks like Kamaru has just taken a nice gradual lap coming in across the line. Well, 207.3. Perhaps just taking it easy, just getting a feel for the car, getting the tyres a little bit extra warm, because you do have ample time to do that. Drivers do have, well, they've had 17 minutes this time due to the tribute beforehand. But this means that the drivers have got ample time to get a feel for the circuit. It's not as though they only have 1 lap. It's not as though they're on the bubble immediately. They can get themselves ready, build up their confidence. And as I was saying earlier, with the chicane of death in particular, it's all about confidence. But across all 3 chicanes, there is a certain level of confidence. As G-Rabbit there, beginning his lap, goes a little bit sideways going through turn 2, having dipped the front part of the car, the front left wheel in particular, underneath the curb there of turn 2, and that just over-rotated the car a little bit, but it shouldn't cost him too much time because he's got that Ferrari well under control. Nice smooth line there through turn 5, and now he's coming up over the brow of the hill into the little kink right-hander of turn 6 and beginning the triple chicane. Now, will he do this flat out after he's come through turn 7? Here we go, coming into turn 8. Does he lift off the throttle on those super softs? No, and that is the power of the mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars and those super soft tyres. That's what you're going to have to watch out for. The drivers in the mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars will have the greater rotation in the rear of the car, and that will enable them to attack that central chicane completely flat out. Now we're going to stay with G-Rabbit a little bit, who's holding on to the provisional pole at the moment, to see whether he also does the same and has that confidence going through the chicane of death, as Spooky Lukey sets a 144.5 and Stephen 2570 a 144.9, and JJ Balding sets a 144.4. Goodness me, these laps are coming in, and G-Rabbit charges through there flat out. I'm going to follow to the end of the lap here. Goodness me, it is a very competitive field right now. And who knows who's going to get pole at this rate. The G-Rabbit gets a little bit sideways there, coming in under braking into the turn 16 to complete the lap. Perhaps just not getting his line right, or suddenly just realising, you need to get over to the left-hand side. But let's see how he completes the lap and what time he sets. And coming across that line then, does not improve the lap, oddly enough. Perhaps it was a case that he decided to bail out of it, and that was that little kink sideways. But let's move across to some of the other drivers. So who else is going around at the moment? So we've got JJ Balding, who's in the midst of a pack of cars. Some drivers sliding down to give themselves some clear space. With regards to slipstream, so it's not illegal to take the toe of another driver, but really you do not want to be in the toe of another driver on a qualifying lap around here. You can gain time on the straight parts, but going through the chicanes in particular, having that dirty air in front will undermine the overall flow of your car and the stability of it under handling conditions, and that can cause drivers to essentially have difficulty and have to lift out through the chicanes where they could gain more time by running in the clearer air. So we're following Stephen 2570 through the chicane of death there. A little bit wobbly side to side. Just seemed to clip the initial curve there and it unsettled the car. But he kept it under control. And this is looking to be quite a fast lap as he's coming around into turn 16 to almost complete the lap. We've got a driver just ahead who's going to be crossing the line as well. Seeing the McLaren 650S, a very powerful car on the straights, despite it being a mid-engine rear-wheel drive car. It's one of its strengths within the class. It's got a very strong 5th through to 7th gear. And it crosses the line at wheel 144.6. As we see DRC JC cross the line as well, not improving there. And we're going to go to Sir Bottlejob here as he crosses the line. No improvement. He's commencing another lap. So let's follow one of the front-engine rear-wheel drive cars now on the lap. As we can see, Bottlejob is going to come charging into turn 1 here. Camaro 75 setting a 145.2 off camera. Coming down to turn 2, gets it nicely planted. Look at the flow of that car going through turn 3 as well. Really well planted, that Mustang. That's why the strengths of the car in the front engine rear wheel drive cars is that it's a very heavy car with the weight. Whilst a lot of the weight is going to be distributed towards the front with that big engine, at the same time the weight distribution is quite nice. The rear end doesn't seem to get away from the car when you're trying to attack the corners. Whereas sometimes the Jaguar F-Type, for example, which is also quite a heavy car, it just feels as though the weight is distributed more heavily towards the front, which means when you go heavy under braking into a corner and then try to get on the power, the rear axis can just rotate a little bit out from underneath the driver's control, as Bottlejob cuts it very fine there, going through the second part of the triple chicane. That would be turn 8, but doesn't seem to have picked up a penalty. You've got to be careful that you can get away with that in the Mustang, because the fact that the car's got quite a high ride height, which means that the front bumper or the under tray of the car isn't going to hit the curb at an angle as if to launch it, although he does get the hairpin there, the main hairpin of this circuit, a little bit off angle, and that might have cost him some time. He's really having to push this lap. You can see Bottlejob is going for it. Now coming through the chicane of death, he's charging it at this point, and it looks as though, oh, he's clipped the wall. He's going to have to abort that lap for sure. That is very unfortunate. He just turned in a little bit too early there, and you can see what happened. He's going to try and get off the racing line for the drivers. Oh, dearie me. Fortunately, he's ghosted. That's one of the advantages we have on GT Sport, but he bumped the chicane, and that is very unfortunate. Now we're just going to head to the some of the other cars coming around. So Spooky Lukey's just coming to the end of a lap. Looking at the Jaguar meanwhile. Does Spooky Lukey improve on his current lap at the end of this one? In fact, let's bring a little bit more information up on screen for you folks. So at this point in time, we've got the pole lap of a 144.4 with 10 minutes to go in this qualifying session. Spooky Lukey does not improve, and we'll continue to follow Spooky Lukey around the lap now, so you can get a flavour for what the other front engine rear wheel drive car of the Jaguar flows like around the circuit. As he goes very sideways into turn 2 there, really pushing the limits of that car, Spooky Lukey. You can see he's going all out. He really wants to be at the front of this grid for this race. Now, one thing to note as well, ladies and gentlemen, is that this race is going to be a standing start with a full start check. This is not a rolling start race. Now, what that will mean is that the drivers are going to have to be wary of one another when the lights go out. It's about reaction time, but also that you're going to see the acceleration power of these cars being different depending on the car and how strong they are in first, second and third gear. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about what we can expect to start a bit later. Let's focus on the driving right now. The Spooky Lukey's flying through the corners there. Let's bring up a little bit of race information as well. Bit of a messy lap this one. I think he's just pushed it a bit too much as Murkoff tries to get off the racing line there. Just about gets out the way, coming over the brow of the hill into the hairpin here. The primary hairpin, as I say. And coming through here now into the third sector of the circuit. Following behind the train of cars here. He may get a distant tow. But the thing he's got to watch out for here is that distant tow is going to affect his ability to get the car settled upon turn into the chicane of death, but he gets it nicely through that. That was a really smooth line and just misses the wall. That's as close as you want to be to that exit wall coming out of the chicane of death. And now he's coming out into turn 16. He's got to nail this because it hasn't been the cleanest laps, but it's definitely been a very aggressive lap. And when you've only got 73 thousandths of a second separating third from pole, every thousandth counts here. As JC crosses the line to improve to 146.1, Spooky Lukey will cross the line. Is this an improvement? Not quite, unfortunately. He's going to have to do another one as Murkoff now crosses the line as well. No improvement there. So let's take a little look around the field once again. As we can see, Bubo Lubo has improved. We're 1 at 45.2. And coming out of the pits right now is your provisional pole sitter, JJ Balding, who is sitting on that 144.4, very closely followed, only 58 thousandths behind Stephen 2570, who is also driving in the McLaren 650S. And then we've got the Jaguar Spooky Lukey currently in provisional third, only 73 thousandths off of pole. Then a further two temps down the road from JJ Balding's pole lap is currently G-Rabbit bringing around the Ferrari 458 Italia. And again, you can see the variety of car here in terms of there's not a clear distinction of just the McLaren 650Ss all being the pole sitters. We have two McLaren 650Ss literally first and second at the moment, but the gap down to the next car, third, is so tight, and that's a front engine rear wheel drive car. This shows you how good Dragon Trail Seaside is for really unleashing the best of all the different drivetrains within the Group 4 category. This is not going to be, and it never was expected to be, a one car category. Instead, this is going to be a race open to variety. And you're already seeing it here in qualifying as G-Rabbit crosses the line here, and no improvement so far. And actually, let's switch a little bit over to Kamaru here. We haven't really spent much time with Kamaru, the Norwegian driver. The thing about Kamaru is, I think he's probably wanting to get a little bit more out of today's race, because he did have a difficult race. Although he finished second last time out at Autopolis, it was a really unfortunate race because you could see Kamaru in the Dodge really wanted to go for the win, but he just didn't have the pace to quite overtake JJ Balding. But hopefully here he can make some magic happen. As he crosses the line, no improvement. No improvements in any of the laps at the moment. It's actually been quite quiet in terms of improving the lap times here. We're just going to take a little look through the field at this point as well. We've got Bubo Lubo. And you can see, even down in 7th right now, the gap between 7th and pole, provisional pole, is only 8 tenths. This is a very tight field, and this is fantastic to see. And again, it's across so many different cars, as we've got Hit the Max sitting in the pits with the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. We've got Murkov coming around at this point, currently in 9th, sitting 1.45 seconds off of the pole sitter. So we can see that the gap seems to be starting to occur around 7th at the moment. So we're getting a sort of vibe that there's going to be a split in the field, assuming of course there's no craziness at the start, which of course there's always guaranteed to be tons of action when you've got a standing start. We could be seeing at this point a sort of field splitting up between 1st through to 7th and then 8th downwards. But of course, it may be the case that some drivers just feel more comfortable in qualifying, because remember, in qualifying conditions, the car is much lighter, it flows much more nicely around the circuit, you don't have to worry as much about tyre wear, and that's where you're using these racing super softs to literally throw the car around like nobody's business. And that's something you can do in Group 4 compared to other categories, because what is Group 4 about? Let's talk a little bit about that as we're following Bubo Lubo around into Sector 3 right now. The thing about Group 4 is these are all road legal cars. So McLaren 650S, you can own one of these if you've got the money to do so, and you can drive it around the streets of your local neighbourhood. However, the difference between the car you drive on the streets and the one you see here is there's just some very minor aerodynamic refinements to the body kit, and also you've got that spoiler on the back to help with the overall downforce and the handling of the car. On top of that as well, the engines have been tuned specifically in terms of balance and performance for racing in the Group 4 category. So if I remember correctly, the engine of the McLaren 650S, as represented here, is going to be providing an output as Murkov improves to 145.3, putting up into 8th at this point, and Bubo does not improve. We're going to follow at this point as JJ Balding improves, but we're going to follow Hit the Mac for a little bit, because we haven't really shown too much of the V8 going around the circuit, the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. But the Group 4 cars have had their engines tuned specifically to race in this category. So whereas the McLaren, I believe, don't quote me on this, would normally have somewhere in the region of, say, 500 horsepower, racing around here, it's going to have in the region of about 370 or 380 horsepower. Likewise, if you look at the Jaguar F-Type, because it's running the 5-litre V8 supercharged engine, you would normally expect that road legal car to be running about 552 horsepower. Here it's running in the region of about 390 or so. It's been down-tuned specifically to be competitive. So this will really feel like you're watching touring car, just a little bit faster. British Touring Car Championship, BTCC for example, I believe the cars are all road legal cars restricted to about 300 horsepower. So here we're only looking about 50 to 100 horsepower more, depending on the car you're looking at. But of course as well, what you do have to keep in mind is that some cars here are going to be heavier than others. So there might be some cars that are quite low on power, and whilst we're not seeing any today, let's take an example. The Audi TT would be running at about 330 horsepower, but it's a lighter car, but also it's a front engine front wheel drive car, and that drivetrain is very strong, hence why the engine powers had to be dropped down significantly to balance it out. So following Mac here, we haven't really talked much about Mac's lap so far, fellow British driver here, as somebody seems to have got a yellow flag for coming through the chicane of death, and Mac grazes the wall there. We can see Stevens pulled off the racing line. Perhaps he's just taking a moment to settle himself down, perhaps he clipped the wall there and letting everyone through, as JC improves to 146.0, taking provisional 10th, and Mac's coming through into turn 16 here, and then finally turn 17 to complete the lap. And what you can see is that Mac is getting a very nice flow coming out of the corner, and hopefully this is going to be improvement for the British driver. Not an improvement, unfortunately. It looked like it was on for improvement, but it seems to be hitting the wall in terms of improving times at this point, and a good number of drivers are. Now at this point, ladies and gentlemen, we're looking back to JJ Balding, our provisional pole sitter at this point in time, with 1/10 between him and Stephen 2570, who's currently sitting in second. Now it is worth noting that the two drivers are both running the McLaren. Stephen's sitting off to the side of the track there. Perhaps he's just had to take a break, take a toilet break, for example. And we've got JJ Balding coming charging through here. Looks like he's really trying to improve the lap as G Rabbit has moved up to 4th for 144.6. We're going to stay with Balding here just to complete the lap, really making that McLaren just flow around the circuit. Very nicely done there, coming down into the hairpin. And what's quite difficult is the fact that that hairpin, whilst it starts off tight on the apex opens up and is a continuous right-hander as you come into the final sector. And that means that when you get on the power, you have to be careful about how soon you get on the power, because you can end up, whilst applying the steering wheel lock to the right, over-rotating the rear, and that can cause the car to slide and cost you time. But Balding there got it very smooth, fully under control, and that was very well done. Now coming into turn 16, can he hook it up nicely? So he's going to try and stay just a little bit off that curb and then touch the curb to rotate the car in. Very nicely done there. This is a very clean lap from Balding. You can see why he's our provisional pole sitter at the moment. And he's going to come across the line with an improvement? Not quite. And Stephen's just come into the pits right now. So with 1 minute 21 to go, Balding is going to be the first of our final laps coming around the circuit. It looks as though Stephen 2570 has settled for provisional second, sitting currently on a 144.5. Will he be able to hold on to that second? We'll find out. As Balding goes a little bit wide there, and I think he's taken everything he possibly can out of the car there. So what we're going to do, we're going to jump off of Balding, because I don't think that's going to be an improvement. And instead we are going to come around to try and find our next driver who is on their final lap at this point in time. And that would appear to be, if I just keep going round, not the Wilkinator, just trying to find the driver, folks. It would be Kamaru 75. So Kamaru is currently sitting in 5th position, provisional 5th, with what would appear to be a 145. A 145.0, a high 145.0. Can he improve and drop into those 144s? Even if it's a high 144, I think it's going to help him secure 5th position and perhaps even challenge for 4th as G Rabbit comes into the pits. So that's their lap over. Buo Lupo's also into the pits, switching to the... No, these drivers are switching to the softs, because as soon as we finish qualifying, we immediately go into race conditions, and we need to talk a little bit about that strategy. Keep in mind that some drivers are going to switch off that super soft because of tyre life, and tyre life is going to be a critical factor here. We'll talk more about that when the race gets underway. But staying with Kamaru at this point, very well planted there through the chicane of death, and now coming up into turn 16. Let's see if Kamaru can get this nailed up nice and tightly. Coming through 16 then, gets a little bit onto the curb, then you can see that just helps the rear of the car to rotate. And the session has finished, so whoever crossed the line now, this is their final lap. Nobody can go on a new lap, so Kamaru's going to come across the line. Is this going to be an improvement? And it's an improvement to a 144.7. What an improvement. I think that's going to help him secure 5th position, but we've got to wait and see. So Bottle Job's now coming through. Can Bottle Job improve? Although he's got to jump 5/10 of a gap in order to get above 5th place. He could do it. You never know. Don't rule out the power of the Mustang. As all the drivers are coming around now, Spooky Lukey on the back of Murkoff there, using a little bit of the toe there to help improve his lap. As Jules SK comes around with a 146.9. Bottle Job does not improve, neither does Murkoff, neither does Spooky Lukey. Now we've got Bubo going around as well at this point. One of our last drivers to be going around by the looks of things. In fact, we've got another driver coming across the line at this point in time. I'm just going to quickly switch over to him. So that's Stephen 2570. Perhaps he's trying to quickly improve the lap, although I doubt it. You never know. No, he's just doing a little bit of aerobatics there across the line. Or acrobatics, I should say, rather than aerobatics. But then we've got Bubo Lubo. So Bubo Lubo is our last, I believe, driver who's on a hot lap at this point in time. Can Bubo improve and potentially gain 200 in order to get into into 6th and beat the Bottle Job? So he's going to come across the line any second now. And it is not an improvement, unfortunately. So Bubo is going to be starting 7th unless there's any other drivers out there who are on a qualifying lap. But looking around the field, I think everything is wrapped up qualifying wise. You'll see JJ Balding on the right hand side in pole and Stephen 2570 in second and the rest of the field behind. keep an eye out for Spooky Lukey, because the acceleration of that Jaguar on the start is going to be quite strong. And also the Ferrari drivers, keep an eye on them with the Finn, G-Rabbit, sitting in what is 4th place. That car is very strong off the line as we're about to get underway. 3, 2, 1... and we've got the lights, and it's going to be lights out, and away we go. And it's a difficult start for Balding by the looks of things, with Stephen getting the stronger of the starts. And as the camera's going to rotate round as they go through turn 1 here, you can see, look at Spooky Lukey on the right of your camera. He's got a really nice run. He's going to be on the inside into turn 2 here, as Stephen has made it up into 1st place, and the drivers all come crunching down into the 1st corner. Spooky on the inside. Is he going to be able to pull off the overtake into turn 1? Not quite, because it then goes to the outside for turn 2. And coming through turn 3, looks like all the drivers have made it through very safely, and now coming up into turn 4 here, the tyres are going to be cold. The drivers have got to be careful of that. Into 4 and then into 5. We're under braking here. Are we going to see any moves? It looks as though we're just going to move down the field at this point. It looks as though Murkov's going for the move on Kamaru for 5th place. They're going to be side by side going over the hill, but we're going to switch back to the front to see all the cars come through, as Balding's going to try and go around the outside of Stephen into 7, and he's going for the move, and he's going to have it, I think, 'cause he's kept it on the track and into turn 8, and Balding has got back in front. What a move from the driver. That was one heck of a move to go around the outside there on those cold tyres. But let's not forget the rest of the field. We can see that Kamaru is holding on to 5th right now as they come down into the hairpin. We're going to stay with Balding initially, and he's holding off against Stephen as Spooky is looking to the inside, and it's unfortunately looking as though G-Rabbit has gone into the wall there. Was there a little bit of contact? We're going to have to take a look back at that in a second. But that means that G-Rabbit has fallen back into the clutches of the guys fighting over 5th place right now. As we can see, coming through the chicane of death, guys. You've got to watch out here. It's got to be one at a time. You can't go side by side through here, as everybody seems to be making... Oh, no! Bumo's clipped the wall, and he's knocked into the wall, and he's fallen to the back of the pack. What a disaster. But remember, he's got plenty of racing to go. And that's only lap 1, folks. So as the drivers are going to come around to complete lap number 1. Let's give you your roll call of how the standings are after the 1st lap, which has been eventful. So, crossing the line, firstly, Jay Balding leading the field with Stephen 25.70 following close behind. Then Spooky Lukey in 3rd, Markov in 4th, Jill Rabbit in 5th, Kamaru 6th, Hit the Max 7th, Jules in 8th, Wilkinator in 9th, and in DRC JC in 10th. Then we've got Bubo in 11th. But let's stay with Jules and these guys here, because they're all fighting over 8th place. Keep it smart, gentlemen. There's plenty of laps to go as JC goes to the inside and under braking goes a bit deep. But look how he slid the car there through turn 2. What a fantastic move by the British driver there in the Vantage, really making the most of those tyres early on, and you can see the confidence of that driver there. Now, whilst the action does seem to calm down a little bit, we will have to take a look at what happened to Bubo Lubo very shortly. We're just going to make sure we don't miss any immediate action. In fact, we'll stay with JC just a little longer, although he's pulling away from Jules, and Jules has got Wilkinator right up his backside at this point, so we're just going to follow them through sector 2, as there's a little bit of kick up of dirt as all the drivers try to cut across what is turn 6, the little right-hand kink, just a tiny bit, but it looks as though at this point things have calmed down, and we can take a look at that replay. So we're going to watch Bubo Lubo. This is the driver who had the incident, it would seem. So they came down to this corner. Now remember, we did see G-Rabbit go wide and clip the wall. There may have been contact between him and Spooky Lukey, but we're not sure about that. But this led to the concertina effect where all the cars bunched up. Now, coming into the chicane of death, let's see what happened with Bubo Lubo. So he was on the inside going into turn 12, outside into 13, but all the drivers seem to settle down nicely here. And as he's coming through, does he just get it wrong? Yeah, he clipped the wall. He clipped the wall of turn 15, and that's what led to him piling into the wall. But he's very fortunate there, because the car essentially got shot forward into the wall and ground along the wall rather than spinning out. But we're back with Jules at this point, and we can see this fighting with Wilkinator going to the inside. Typical move into turn 16, this one. Well played by Wilkinator, and the British driver is up a position. So, as we've completed lap number 2 onto lap number 3, Jay Balding is starting to pull a little bit away from Stephen at this point, where there being a gap of 1.3 seconds, and then it's 1.5 down to Spooky Lukey. Then G-Rabbit is back up into 4th already. Well done to the man. The Finnish driver is doing very well here in the Ferrari 458, and he's got Kamaru up his backside at this point. So it looks as though G-Rabbit managed to get past Kamaru. We didn't see that because we were focusing on what happened to Bubo Lubo. Sorry about that, folks. So much action happening right now. But still, we can see that the drivers are really pushing after. Spooky Lukey is holding on to 3rd right now. I get the feeling a move may be coming. And going back further down the field, we've got Hit the Mac in 6th at the moment with Murkov in the 190 right up his backside. And then JC just a little bit further back. Now, the thing about JC is this is a really nice position for JC to be in, because he's not in the dirty air of these two at the moment, where the dirty air zone being only 0.8 seconds. Pardon me, but the key thing is that means that JC can be ready to pounce when Murkoff starts to fight with Hit the Mat and the gap starts to close up. So he's probably just biding his time right now. He's going to creep up to the back of them, just keep himself in a nice position. We're going to look a bit further down the field. It's spreading out a little bit from 9th to 10th to 11th as Wilkinator's been passed. Or has something gone horribly wrong there for Wilkinator? And we're just going to keep looking further back. So we've got Wilkinator has been passed. He's going sideways through here as his tyres hit their cliff already. Doesn't look as though they have. Perhaps he just went a little bit off. We're not going to be able to catch that, unfortunately. And then Sir Bottlejob bringing up the back of the field at the moment. Running on the Racing Supersofts. Perhaps Bottlejob got it wrong somewhere, but it does look as though something has gone wrong for Bottlejob, which is unfortunate, but still. Only 5 seconds off of 11th, only 20 seconds off the leaders. Anything can happen. Let's not rule them out. So coming back to the front of the grid temporarily, we can see that the gap is expanding between Balding and Stephen. Meanwhile, Spooky Lukey is definitely starting to feel some pressure, I reckon, from the drivers behind G-Rabbit and Kamaru. Now, let's take a look at what Spooky Lukey's running tyre-wise. Racing Supersoft, so he is running the fastest tyre here for pace, but it just looks as though G-Rabbit feels more comfortable at this point in the race compared to Lukey. Now, let's go over to G-Rabbit, and we're going to ride on board a little bit here. So riding on board with the driver, running the softs, which is going to be quite a strong tyre here, and we'll talk about the difference in the tyres in a second. But you can see he's just able to hold on to the rear of Spooky Lukey. He's not too close at this point, but he's got to keep an eye on his rear view mirrors as Lukey goes a tad wide of apex there, going through turn 5, now going over the hill into 6. He's chasing down the British driver at this point, and watch here how he's going to close up to the back of the British driver through the triple chicane. Watch how much confidence the Ferrari driver can take compared to Lukey. Although Lukey really went for it there into turn 6, but goes a little bit wider line and gets a wheel on the runoff area there through turn 7, and look how he's now closing up. But of course that Jaguar has got legs down the straight, so I don't think we're going to see the Ferrari driver here, the Finn. Oh, he's going to go for a mover. Is he going to go for it? No, he's just putting his nose out there to sort of say to Spooky Lukey, look in your mirrors, I'm coming for you, my friend. So we're going to follow him just a little bit further through here. I know there's plenty of action happening further down the field, but we might see a move towards the end of this lap. We'll just complete the lap with the Finnish driver here, and then we'll switch over to some of the other cars. Coming through the chicane of death here, just lifting a little bit there, keeping it smart, keeping it safe, almost bouncing off of the final curve of turn 15, the second part of the chicane of death there, and going into all, but a tiny little gap between the wall keeps the Ferrari driver safe. Again, taking a peek into turn 16, but braking nice and early, just trying to put the Jaguar driver off at this point, and Stephen also seems to be falling off the pace in front a little bit. Now that we're going to complete that run of the time with the Finnish driver, and we can see Kamaru is really running onto the back of this chain. So we've got a chain of 4 drivers fighting for second right now. But further down the field, we've got Hit the Mat being pursued very closely by Murkoff here. Now, will Murkoff go for the move? I think a move is going to be on into turn 2 here from the British driver in the Jaguar versus the Brit in the Aston Martin. As we can see, fighting ahead as well. We will definitely have to get that back on replay. Fighting ahead going into turn 2. We'll capture that. But it looks as though Murkoff is staying behind at this point in time and just biding his time as he goes wide there. Oh, careful, Murkoff. You don't want to go out on that gravel and then get on the power. You're going to go flying as Lukey takes to the grass there. So something definitely happened, and we're going to need to see a replay of that fight as Lukey clips the curve and almost puts it on 2 wheels. Goodness me, Lukey. You really love pushing that Jaguar hard. Be careful with it. You don't want to break the car at the end of the day. It needs to get you to the end of the race. But fortunately for us here in Tier 2, we have light damage, not heavy damage. So the damage does wear off after a brief period of time. But let's go back and see what happened there with Spooky Lukey and the drivers coming into turn 2. So we can see here the chain will ride with Stephen at the front of the pack here. So Lukey seems to want to go for the move. He tries going to the outside here, but gets it very, very late on braking, and it wasn't going to work out. That's unfortunate for Lukey. Great idea of an opportunity there, but he went off trying to be optimistic on the brakes, but still it shows the sign of a driver who's really trying to fight his way up the field, and hopefully he can make the gains later on, because it's only 10 seconds from 7th to 1st right now. It's not as though the race for lead is settled and done. Now looking further down the field, are there any changes? So we can see that JC's in 8th currently, Bubo Lubo in 9th, Wilkinator in 10th. He's got past Jules. He must have recently got past Jules. Let's see if we can get that on replay. No, it seems as though it happened well before the replay, so we missed that. But Wilkinator is up into 10th, and then we've got Jules running behind. And then looking further down the field, so we've got Jules, then we've got Bottlejob, who is closing up to the back of Jules gradually. It was 5 seconds last time we looked, 2 laps ago, but now that gap is down to 1.6 seconds. So Bottlejob is on a mission to get up to 11th. But let's hop back up towards the front of the field, and there's fighting between Mac and Murkov here, as it looks as though Mac is holding on to 5th for the time being, taking to the defensive line on the inside into turn 2 here. Very well done by them, and they're just holding on to that position at the moment as Murkov gets it wrong. That is an absolute nightmare. We're just going to see what happened there to Murkov. I get the feeling it's what happened the last lap, but this time he went the full distance and planted it off the road onto the gravel, yet fell onto the gravel. The rear left wheel got lit up and he spun off the circuit. That's unfortunate, but there's still plenty of time, Murkov. You're not out of it yet. Now looking forward to Bubo Lubo at this point, who is chasing down JC, the fight for 7th. The Aston Martin here is going to have a bit of difficulty through the mid-sector because of its front engine rear-wheel drive configuration compared to that McLaren. So just keep an eye for this McLaren, as Bubo I think is going to get a really strong run here going over the hill. And we're looking back at this point. We want to really be looking forward. My apologies. But coming down the hill then, in fact, Bubo's just fallen back a little bit. Perhaps he didn't have the best of runs out of the final part of the triple chicane, or perhaps he's biding his time. But you can see that a move is potentially going to happen there within the next couple of laps. Now at the front of this little pack of drivers at the moment, we've got Hit the Mac, and Spooky Lukey is essentially now having to try and chase down Mac and regain the position. The positions that he lost earlier, as Mac clips the wall. Lukey does as well, but whereas Mac really hit the wall, we can see that Lukey just grazed the wall, and he's got the pace, he's got the overspeed. Going down to turn 16 then, I think it's going to be a standard move. All said and done, he's going to send it on the inside. Mac goes as late as possible on the brakes. They're side by side through turn 16. This is fantastic to see. Both drivers giving each other plenty of space, and careful behind as well. We've got Bubo Lubo as Hit the Mac jumps into the pits. Those super softs have had it after 6 laps, and it's at this point that we should really talk about the tyres, but we need to focus on JC and Loopy at this point, because these two drivers are fighting into turn 2. JC, I think, is going to go for the move here, coming down into turn 2. He's looking to the outside. Bubo Lubo is defending to the inside here, and Bubo has held onto the position for another instance of turn 2. But I think JC's going to have to really send it in a minute. It seems as though the driver wants it, and he's going to get it. Now looking up further the field, Kamaru's in 4th at this time. G-Rabbit's in 3rd. No change then. Stevens leading that little cluster for second, and Balding is pulling away very gradually at this point. 3.9 seconds between Balding in 1st and Steven in 2nd. So there is starting to form a gap between the top pack and then the rest of the field, but it's not a huge gap, and Lukey is on a mission to chase down that leading pack. You can see he's already pulled 2 seconds on Bubo, who is having to focus more on defending against JC. Oh, this is fantastic stuff. We're only 7 laps in, and I should say 7 laps or 12 minutes in, and there's been so much fighting. I can't wait to see what's going to happen in the next 48 minutes. But looking down the field at this point, it looks as though the action is settling down a little bit. And it looks like Bottle Job has actually had a bit of a misfortune, or perhaps he's gone into the pits. Let's take a look at those tyres. He's gone into the pits. He's put on a new set of super softs. That's why he's fallen down the field. Now, this is a really good point to start talking about the tyres and what we can expect from the drivers as they go deeper and deeper into this race. And we're just going to focus on Steven and G-Rabbit. We'll stay on G-Rabbit in particular, because I think Kamaru is going to potentially go for a move in a bit. So, the drivers are probably going to only be using the Racing Super Softs and the Racing Soft here. The time difference per lap when both tyres are in their prime is in the region of 0.7 to 0.8 seconds. Now, the key thing about those tyres is in sectors 1 and 3, the Super Soft is not going to have too much of an advantage over the soft, as Bubo comes in for his first pit stop, coming off of a set of softs, and will be put a bit down the field. However, as G-Rabbit gets a little bit sideways under braking into turn 2, the Super Soft will be the strongest through Sector 2, which is where you need the greatest possible tyre grip in order to get the highest possible apex speeds through the triple chicane. So what you can imagine is that's where the Super Soft drivers will be at their strongest, but around the rest of the lap, the Super Soft will provide a small advantage, but it's not going to be as noticeable as one may expect. So the guys running the softs here will have the longevity on the tyre. Now, I'm expecting with the Super Soft drivers pitting after 6 to 7 laps, we would see that the soft tyre is going to go about 9 to 10 laps. And if anybody goes to the medium, which is about 1 second slower than the soft, so in return about 1.5 to 1.8 seconds slower than the Super Soft when they're all in their prime, we'd expect the medium to last about 15 laps if it's eked out. Of course, it will vary from driver to driver, because some drivers will be running brake bias towards the rear to help save tyres, or the front, as G-Rabbit gets a little bit skittish under braking there, and that's those soft tyres on the Ferrari really starting to take their toll, particularly the front left and the rear left. They've both taken a pounding, and I get the feeling that we're going to see G-Rabbit go for a pit stop shortly, because otherwise he's going to be losing a lot of time trying to defend against Kamaru, because he can undercut Kamaru by simply being the first guy to pit here if Kamaru doesn't follow him into the pits. So we're just going to ride with these guys, but that tyre wear is definitely getting to the Ferrari. It's one of the weaknesses of that Ferrari, but on the flip side, its fuel management is one of the strongest here in Group 4. As he's coming to the end of turn 16, then you can see skidding into turn 16, going sideways. Bit of a drift there, and all three drivers are coming into the pits. Oh no, G-Rabbit's going further. He threw a dummy there, and he carries on in second. Now, was that the right cause? Kamaru and Stephen both come off their super softs there, and those guys have done a fantastic job of managing those super softs for 9 laps. If G-Rabbit's tyres are like that after 9 on the soft, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, as a lot of the drivers now are starting to pit. So Stephen's coming out the pits, and he's on another set of super softs. Then we've got Kamaru coming out the pits as well on a set of super softs. Meanwhile, looking down the field here, we can see as Spooky Lukey comes out the pits, we've got Hit the Mac, who's also coming through into turn 2. Can Lukey hold on? Because he was in 5th going into the pits, and it looks though Hit the Mac has just got out in front of Spooky Lukey. That's not ideal for the Jaguar driver. I reckon Lukey was hoping that the gap they'd been able to pull out on Mac would have been enough to enable him to come out in front of Mac, and that means he's now going to have to do a lot of work. Unless Mac pits immediately afterwards, he's going to have to do a lot of work here, and I don't think Mac's going to pit, because he only pitted recently, and that is the power of the undercut here in pitting, ladies and gentlemen. If you go for that undercut, you can come out in front of the drivers who then pit, and then they've got to try and fight their way back past you. And let's keep in mind here that both drivers are on the super soft. The difference will be that the Vantage will be a bit more planted through the corners, whereas Spooky Lukey and the Jaguar is going to be stronger on those straights. The acceleration of the cars is about the same in the lower gears, but it's in the higher gears. So this 5th gear right now, this is where the Jaguar thrives. 5th, 6th and 7th, and you're going to see a potential move here as they come down the hill into the hairpin once again. So this is going to be turn 11, and charging through there, he's looking up the inside. Has he made the move stick? We'll see as we come to the camera. It looks as though Lukey's got the inside going into turns 12, and he'll be on the outside for 13. Mac is going to have to back out of it though, because the chicane of death is coming out, and you can't go side by side through there, guys. You've got to give the space, and Lukey's clipped the inner wall of turn 14. Oh goodness me, the chicane claims another victim. That is unfortunate, as Balding comes into the pits for his first pit stop, and G-Rabbit finally comes into the pits now, running longer. Did it benefit Rabbit? Well, Balding's going to come out in front, but the one we've got to watch out for here, as Stephen comes across the line, is did G-Rabbit gain from staying out a bit longer? It doesn't look as though he has, and look on the left hand side there. Are we going to see G-Rabbit coming out? No, he's dropped down into 4th at this point in time. So going a bit longer on those softs didn't really work out for the Ferrari driver, but what you can see, look at how Stephen has closed up to the back of Balding at this point. The gap was 4 seconds when Stephen came into the pit, and now it's down to 2 seconds. So going for that early stop has really worked out in the favour of the second McLaren driver in this little group here. And Stephen gets it sideways going through turn 4. That's really unfortunate what happened there, and we'll just take another look at that in a second. I reckon he clipped the curb into turn 4, and that caused the car to over-rotate. Very dangerous to do so there. You want to cut turn 4 as much as possible, but he just got it wrong in terms of cutting. Hasn't lost too much, but he's opened the door to Kamaru to chase down his main championship rival, JJ Balding. Kamaru will want the win here in order to try and fight back up into first place in the standings. Now, before we look to the replay, let's just see what else is happening through the field. G-Rabbit has cleared the guys in 5th and 6th, but Hit the Mac is being chased very heavily right now by Bubo Lubo. We're just going to ride on board with Bubo for a bit, as we keep getting this rearward camera for some reason. And sorry about that. Can we get a front camera now? No, we still can't get a front camera, so it seems to have glitched. Right, we'll have to give up on that camera work for the time being. But meanwhile, Bubo is going for the move on the inside, and there's a bit of contact there. Mac did go wide, but it looks like a little bit of a push to pass there. Not sure. The stewards are going to have to look into that one afterwards, because Bubo has gained the place. Bit of contact. It might have been that Mac just went wide and Lubo overextended into the corner, but that's for the stewards to decide. Of course, you'll have your opinion at home, folks, what you think about that incident, but we're not going to get into the politics here. Let the stewards do that one. That's their job. Now, Mac, meanwhile, is really trying to come back by the looks of things, as the gap is only half a second at this point, and Mac's going for a little bit of a sneaky lunge there into turn 16, just trying to throw and scare the willies out of Bubo going into turn 16. Didn't quite work out that time, but Mac definitely wants that place back, and I think the British driver wants to get the advantage on the Bulgarian in the very near future, as they're going to run down into turn 2 here, and you can see the Aston Martin and the McLaren are very equal on the straights. Max, of course, got the slipstream advantage coming into turn 2. He's settling down at this point, perhaps just thinking, right, calm it down, you've got another lap, we've got plenty of time in the race, don't waste your race over a single moment. Remember, you can gain the position through multiple ways, fighting on track and in the pits. And we're just going to take a look back at the replay involving involving Stephen here. So we're going to see as he comes into turn 4, he's going to hit the curb, bounce the curb, bounce the car across, and as a result went sideways. So what happened there was he dropped across the curb, and Stephen's gone wide again. Goodness me, it's the commentator's curse occurring once again. He must be pushing that car really hard to be going sideways, coming out of turn 9 there, going over the brow of the hill through turn 10 and now down to 11. Oh, that's unfortunate. But with regards to what happened at turn 4 for Stephen there, as we're just going to jump the camera around once again to see what else is going on, is that in turn 4, if you get too tight on terms of your cut to the curb on turn 4, it will cause, if you've got a low car, a low ride height car, it will cause the car's under tray to bounce off of the curb, and that will cause the car to essentially be launched, and that's what happened there. You saw the rear of the car get launched and it spun sideways. Now, looking towards the chicane of death, Spooky Lukey in 8th at the moment. He's defending against Murkov at this point, and Lukey's having a fight for these positions. Gets it nice and clean through the chicane of death this time, but Murkov is right up the backside of Lukey. Oh, goodness me, this is going to be a tough one for Lukey. Can Murkov get the advantage going down into turn 2, because he's not close enough to do it here into turn 16, although he does look to the inside, perhaps just to throw Lukey off a little bit, and also going for that tighter line can lead to you getting a better launch if you're able to cut it nice and tight to the apex, as Hit the Mac comes into the pits off of a set of super softs. And I think Mac is going to be coming out of the pits very shortly. But in the meantime, what we can see going down into turn 2 then, as Mac's going to come out behind this group. So that stop has cost Mac quite a few places. He's going to have to see if he can regain them over the course of the race distance. And it looks like Mac might be taking on fuel because he's still in the pits. And now he's finally coming out of the pits. So it doesn't look as though Murkov was able to get the move there into turn 2 on Lukey. But coming down the field at this point, we can see Wilkinator's got a nice gap to Jules of 1.8 seconds. But he's got 8 seconds to make up on Bottle Job. And then we've got Jules, meanwhile, further down the field here. Running in 11th, and then Mac right at the back right now. Did Mac take on fuel here? Yes, he filled up. I think that's going to be the fuel to go to the end, or almost to the end. So Mac has refueled for the distance already, only 20 minutes into the race. Normally the fuel loads would last somewhere between 35 and 40 minutes, depending on both fuel saving and also the car, but that's why Mac has pitted for such a long duration to take on the fuel, and I think Mac is going for the long game here. In fact, let's check what tyres Mac also put on. He put on super softs, right. He's going for the long game on fuel, but he's going to be doing a number of quick stops to change the tyres, because a pit stop here for just tyres will cost you around 10 to 11 seconds, whereas for fuel it's a lot more. Looking at the tyres of Jules here running on the super softs, you can see that Mercedes has been very harsh under braking to those front tyres, and he's probably going to have to pit off of those soon in order to maintain the pace. Meanwhile, Wilkinator in front is really battering that front left tyre on the racing super softs. That Ferrari has probably got its brake bias about 1 to the front, alternatively just set to 0, but he hasn't moved the brake bias towards the rear, and he's putting that tyre wear on the front, knowing that the rear end of that Ferrari can be unstable when tyre wear becomes a factor. Now moving up the field here at this point, so we've got Bottle Job, who's currently running on the super softs, chasing after Murkov, who has fallen a bit back off of Lukey. Perhaps Murkov just got it a little bit wrong somewhere around the lap, so he's backed off a little bit. And now we've got Lukey chasing down the super softs, what would be JC, so the Aston Martin driver here in 6th, being chased by Lukey at the moment. JC has had a quiet race. We haven't had too much camera focus on him, but he's doing a good job, and he's showing that consistency which sometimes didn't quite stay there with him in the Group 1 race, but he's definitely a lot more consistent today, and it is starting to pay off, whereas Lukey is chasing hard behind. And I get the feeling here the Jaguar driver is going to be going for a move very soon, so let's stay with these two and see what happens as they come into turn 5. So as they're coming through into turn 5 then, it looks as though JC did not get the best launch out the corner there, and Lukey is going to go to the outside into, well, the inside of 6, the little kink here, and now to the outside for 7, but JC has taken that defensive inside line here, and Lukey's backed out of it. He hasn't got the bravery to go around from the outside. He's probably going to bide his time and go for the launch into the hairpin at turn 11. So here he's going to be running very close, and indeed he is right up the backside of Spooky Lukey at this point, and as they come over the hill, watch for the move here. And JC is defending to the imminent inside, making Lukey go to the outside. Under braking, can Lukey get it round the outside? Doesn't look like it, but he's still got a little bit of his nose alongside, but he's going to have to back out of it. He hasn't got a claim to that racing line, and instead he's going to have to bide his time. Perhaps if he can get a good run out of the chicane of Devons. He's right out the backside of JC here. Oh, goodness me, this is tense. Looking on board from behind right now. You know, Lukey got a really good run there, but he just clipped the rear of the Aston Martin driver. That's unfortunate. Lukey could have got the move there if he hadn't clipped the back, but you can see how hard Lukey is trying. He doesn't want a repeat of last time out, and he's going for it. Credit to the man. He's just going to have to hold it off for a little bit. By this time, you can see he's just backing off a little bit there in turn 16, taking a wider line, cooling it down a little bit, and he's going to get ready to go again. Will he do it this time, going into turn number 2? We're just going to stay on the rear here, and Spooky Lukey is going to the inside through turn 1, and we're going to switch across to the external camera as Lukey goes down the inside, but he'll be on the outside for turn 2. Has he got enough of an overlay here and under braking, the confidence to make it move. He's broken very deep, but he's flying through, and that was a very nice pass for 6th place. So looking around the field now, I think he's going to have this one under control for the time being as Murkov goes wide again. Did he keep it on track this time? Yes, he did. Well done to Murkov. He didn't repeat the incident from last time. And now looking further down the field, Bottle Job is spaced out from Jules and hit the Mac at this point, as it would seem. Now, Hit the Mac is trying to chase after Jules here, and it could be the case that it moves on for the Aston Martin driver versus the Mercedes. We will take a look further up the field in a second, folks, but let's just see whether there's going to be a move into turn 5 here. You can go for the move under braking into turn 5. It's a bit of a dangerous move because essentially it's coming out of a corner in a high-speed zone into a braking zone where you need to make sure the rear end of the car is settled before you brake, because otherwise it's going to cause the car to skid about. But coming down the hill into 6, he does look to the inside to Hit the Mac, but he hasn't quite got it there, so he's going to have to sit behind. But I reckon a move is going to be on coming down into turn 11. Mac is really showing a pace advantage at this point in time, and I think that's because he's on much fresher tyres despite the heavy fuel load here, and he's right up the backside of Jules, and this is going to be one heck of a move as he looks to the inside here. The driver's going to try and go for it under braking, and he's got it under braking, I think. Yep, Hit the Mac goes to the inside. You can see those carbon discs have lit up on the carbon ceramic brakes, and he takes a really extended run across the outer curb there. You're allowed to do that, and that enables you to build up a lot of momentum, keep the car stable, and the Aston Martin is very good on these high curves, and that means Mac is now up into 10th place. Nicely done there, sir. But looking through the field at this point, going back to our leader now, we're 15 laps in and almost at the halfway point of the race. Balding is ahead of Kamaru. There seems to have been a bit of a gap growing over the course of probably the last 3 laps since we last looked at these guys between Balding and Kamaru. Balding does seem to feel very comfortable going into each stint compared to Kamaru, but then Kamaru seems to come back deeper in the stints, so wouldn't rule it out yet, but that gap is stabilising in the region of about 4.5 to 4.2 seconds, and then Stephen's a bit further behind. Stephen has had a couple of knocks, as Stephen's gone wide again coming out of turn 5. What happened there? We're going to have to get a replay on that one, but it means that he's dropped down into 4th and he's given up 3rd to G Rabbit at this point in the race. Now we're going to jump back and see what happened. So we're taking a look here, going through turn 3 into 4. So turn 4 there, gets it sideways. That's the replay from earlier. I think I've hit the key. Yep. So we didn't quite get the replay we wanted to there. That was the incident from earlier. My apologies. But I think what happened there was probably coming out of turn 5. He's carried too much speed. And as he's got on the throttle, he's gone beyond the outer curb. And that's led to him getting on the grass and clipping the wall. It's a mistake you can make if you're too enthusiastic on that throttle. And Stephen's just been punished by his enthusiasm there. But still, plenty of time to go. There's well over half an hour of the race still to go. And he's got plenty of action to try and create in order to get back into the podium positions, but also to provide us with fantastic entertainment. Now looking around the field, we've got Bubo just chasing after Stephen, 2 seconds down right now, and then there's a gap of 6.5 seconds to Spooky Lukey as he gets a little sideways go through turn 50. All the drivers love to do that, trying to get as close to that outer wall as possible coming out of the chicane of death. And then we're going down to Murkov in 8th, having gone from JC in 7th. And then we've got Bottle Job going sideways and just scratching the wall coming out of the chicane of death in 9th. And then Hit the Max 7 seconds down here in 10th, chasing after Bottle Job at this point in the race. Taking it quite light there through the chicane of death. It's worth it. If you don't feel 100% confident, then just take it easy through there. And then meanwhile, we've got Jules in 11th at this point. Getting a little bit sideways there going into the chicane of death and having to back out of it significantly. I get the feeling Jules' tyres are heavily worn, or he's trying to get those super softs up to speed. He's getting those super softs up to speed, and that means Wilkinator's going to be going for the move here down to turn 16, and the Ferrari seems much more settled at this race. And I think these two drivers are effectively fighting for different positions here, because Jules has just come out of the pit, whereas Wilkinator, correct me if I'm wrong, is on a set of tyres which have got a bit more wear. And actually, Wilkinator's running the medium here. That is an interesting gamble. That's going to last about 15 laps, but he's going to be, compared to the super soft drivers here, about 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds off the pace at this point. And we can see that Jules is going for the move here into turn 2. There is an overlap between the cars, but Wilkinator has defended to the inside. He's going to give him the space going into 3, and I think Jules has got it done very nicely, using the switch from the outside to the inside through turn 2 into 3, and he's got it nailed and going through 4. Can Jules hold on through 4 here into turn 5 and make sure he can keep it going into sector 2? We're going to stay with these guys because there's not too much action happening elsewhere out on circuit right now, and we'll just see whether Wilkinator makes a charge back coming to the end of sector 2 down into turn 11. So really here at this point, it's all about whether Wilkinator can use the mid-engine rear-wheel drive of the Ferrari as he gets a little bit onto the grass there into what would have been turn 7 there. And he's really not having the cleanest of times through the triple chicane here. I don't think the move's going to be on because he's fallen well back. And in fact, Jules is using the straight line speed despite the slipstream advantage to Wilkinator. And yep, Jules has been able to rate the slipstream temporarily. And I think we're not going to see some action there for a little bit now. So going through the field once again here, we can see that things are bunching up between Bubo, JC and Murkoff here. And we can see also Steven 2570 and Spooky Lukey are pitting. Right, JC and Murkoff are pitting, so Bubo Lubo may be coming out in front of Steven. We're going to have to see it coming down to turn 2. This is going to be close, and this is where all the strategies are getting mixed up. As you know, Steven seems to have got out with a sizable gap to Bubo, so there's about a 2-second gap there between the drivers. It'll probably come down a bit further to about 1.4 seconds as Steven tries to get these tyres lit up. Steven has gone to another set of super softs, so he's really going for the pace here on the he's really going for the pace here on the tyres rather than trying to make the tyres last a long time. But you are seeing a bit of a crisscrossing strategies between different drivers here. As we take a look back up to Bubo here, who is running on that soft, and I get the feeling that essentially what Bubo is going to try and do is take one less stop compared to Steven and jump him through the stop extension, whereby Steven's going to have to do those additional stops. That's an extra 10 seconds in the pit, whereas Bubo is able to essentially recuperate the time by just spending longer out on track, because remember that pace difference when the tyres are in their optimum position is about 0.8 seconds between the soft and the super soft, but the super soft stays in its prime for a lot less than the soft. So whereas the super soft may be in its prime for 2 to 3 laps, meanwhile that soft is going to be in its prime for about 5 laps. And as fuel becomes lighter, the cars will put less wear in the tyres, but of course the flip side of that is that when you're on a set of super softs right at the end of the race, your final stint, as somebody's gone sideways there, what has happened further back the field? And we can see that Hit the Mac has gone sideways into the wall. Can we see what happened to Hit the Mac? So he's coming down into what would be turn 7, so starting the triple chicane sequence here, going into 8 at this point, so it looks okay so far, and then going into 9, he's gone wide and he's launched the car across the circuit, and Murkoff did a very good job to anticipate that and back off the throttle there, because that could have been a disaster for both drivers. That's very unfortunate for Mac as he's skidding into the hairpin there. I think he's got a lot of dirt on his tyres, and Mac's tyres, yep, that front left is shot because of going off the circuit there. I think he's going to have to go for an emergency pit stop, because those super softs are going to be in a very bad state at this point in time. That's unfortunate for Mac, and he's fallen quite a way off the rest of the field. 12 seconds down on Wilkinator and 1 minute off of our race leader. Now meanwhile, what's going on here? It looks as though G-Rabbit is leading at the moment with a 12-second gap to Kamaru, and then further down the field 2 seconds to Balding. Now I think this will be because most likely Balding has pitted, and yep, Balding has pitted, taken on fuel and gone for a set of super softs, and Kamaru has done the same, but he hasn't taken on the fuel. So if you're in Kamaru's shoes at this point, what you want to do is essentially try to make it so that you go as fast as possible here. He's going to try to essentially go as deep as possible before refueling. The idea being he's going to have as light a car as possible going into the final parts of the race. So that final 20 minutes, and I reckon Kamaru's been doing a lot of fuel saving. And look at that, see where he's shifting the car? On the rev gauge there, he's shifting at the halfway point of maximum revs, and Kamaru is really trying to fuel save. Whereas if we flip over to Balding here, let's see where he's upshifting by comparison. Balding is revving the car out a bit more, and that's why probably Kamaru has been a bit slower over the race distance, because he's been employing fuel saving, whereas Balding has been a bit more aggressive on fuel usage, and as a result it's played out in that way at the moment, and we're going to have to see how that goes as we go deeper and deeper into the race. G-Rabbit meanwhile, I'm going to assume, yep, coming into the pits right now, 11 seconds, so it depends. If G-Rabbit decides just to go for tyres here, he could have worked some magic and effectively come out alongside Kamaru and Balding. Now we're going to switch over to Kamaru here and see where the lead Ferrari driver at this point comes out. Is he going to come out in front of Kamaru or side by side? We'll see on the left-hand side of your screen as we transition over here. G-Rabbit's coming out the pits, and he hasn't been able to get in front of Kamaru, but what about Balding? Oh, they're side by side. Oh, there's an instant back there. We'll have to have a look at that in a minute. But G-Rabbit hasn't quite been able to get out in front of Balding. That is unfortunate, because if he'd been able to get out in front of Balding, that would have really compromised Balding's race for Kamaru. But also that would have helped G-Rabbit out in the fact that when he goes for a refuel, Balding will have wasted some time running behind G-Rabbit for a significant period of time. But also keep in mind, look at the back of the camera here. The Bulgarian driver in the form of Bubo Lubo is creeping up to these guys as he gets it nice and clean there through turn 4 into 5. Under braking going a little bit deep there, but he's been able to keep it relatively straight and to the narrow, and that means we've really got a four-way fight for the podium at this point, definitely for that second place. And let's just take a look at what happened further down the field, as somebody did get it horrifically wrong. Now who was it who went sideways? I think it was Mac again, which is unfortunate for us, as he's also clipped the wall. So he's coming through here into turn 7. So into turn 7, he goes wide initially, and he's gone very wide. He's gone very deep on turn 7. Yeah, and the car has completely straight lined, and he's clipped the wall. That is very unfortunate for Mac. He was doing very well earlier on in the race. He's having a rough period at the moment. As he goes wide once again, I get the feeling that Mac's just got to try and find a way of settling it down, as those super softs are just worn. If I was Mac right now, I'd think about going to a set of mediums and just trying to get the car home on that set of mediums, because those tyres, it seems as though he's struggling with those super softs at this point in the race, and because he's so far down now in the rest of the field, 44 seconds down on 11th, he's just going to want to go for longevity and see if other drivers make mistakes here. But it's up to Mac at the end of the day. I think he's gone back to another set of super softs. Perhaps he's going to just try and drive the race of his life to gain some positions. You never know. Keep your eyes peeled on Mac. Don't count him out yet. We've still got 25 minutes to go. Now, looking around the field at this point, Bottlejob going a little bit deep here into turn 16. That Mustang, I think, is going towards the end of its tyres. It's definitely coming towards the end of its fuel. I get the feeling we're going to see a pit stop from Bottlejob within the next 2 laps. That Mustang is quite thirsty on its fuel compared to, say, the Jaguar or the Mercedes or the Aston Martin, the front engine rear wheel drive competitors within the Group 4 class. Looking through to Stephen at this point, running on the super softs down in 6th, but we do have to keep in mind, and he is hunting down Spooky Lukey here, and this seems to be the fight for 5th, which is closing up gradually. And we've got Bubo just running behind G-Rabbit here, and Balding is chasing after Kamaru here, and that gap is coming down. It's coming down at a really fast rate. We're almost within slipstream range here now. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to just ride with Jay Balding, and we're going to see if he closes up going into turn what would be 11. And at this point, I'm just going to take a quick sip of water, if you don't mind, folks. And it looks as though there's some action happening further down the field. I'm going to have to try and get that in a minute, but it looks as though Mac might have closed up to one of the drivers further down the field. But for now, let's just stay with these drivers. Doesn't look as though that gap's closing up just yet, so we're going to hop further down the field. I see, so it's between Yules and Wilkinator. There hasn't been a change between the two of them, but Wilkinator is running very close behind Yules right now. So looking further up the field once again then. And really riding with your top 3 at this point, because it is very close between the top 3, albeit Kamaru is running on a different sort of strategy from Balding, who is running on a different strategy from G-Rabbit. G-Rabbit is running on a similar strategy to Kamaru, but the 2 drivers' pit stops are out of sequence at this point in time. But whereas Kamaru and G-Rabbit are both going to as deep as possible in the race before they refuel, meanwhile Jay Balding is trying to essentially push the car to its maximum. Now he's refueled to the end, so we'll have to see how it plays out between the 3 drivers here. But it's great fun to watch this, folks. I'm sure you're enjoying it at home as well, in the fact that we've got drivers all up and down the field as Bottlejob is pitting. He's finally taking that pit stop that we predicted was coming in the next couple of laps, and this is going to bring him out as he goes to the refuel. This will bring him out roughly in 9th position or 10th position at this point. Now it'll be 9th position, so he has dropped a couple of places. But remember now, he's taken his fuel to the end of the race, and he's on another set of super softs, whereas the drivers in front of him, meanwhile, so we're talking about the likes of Murkoff here, and also DRC JC, will have to pit again very soon and take on the fuel to get them to the end of the race. So really, we're expecting that what's going to happen is JC and Murkoff are going to drop behind Bottlejob, and then it's going to be Stephen and Spooky Lukey fighting for 5th, probably towards the end of the race, really closing up, with Spooky needing to take on more fuel than Stephen, and Stephen closing up gradually. And then we've got Bubo, who is essentially leading the way in 4th, a little bit of a lonely 4th here. And then we've got G-Rabbit chasing after Jay Balding, who's chasing after Kamara, and this top 3 is going to get closer as we go towards the end. But we're going to jump a little bit further back. We can definitely see that Stephen is closing up under Sector 2 against Spooky Lukey here. And going into Sector 3, I get the feeling the McLaren driver is feeling stronger at this point in the race. As Spooky gets a very nice run there through the chicane of death. And Stephen has hit the wall. I think he's hit straight into the wall there, going through the chicane of death into turn 14 rather than the second half of 15. In fact, he hit the wall in 15. Let's just double check that. So we're just going to ride with Stephen. He's coming through into the chicane of death. And wham, just clip the wall. That's very unfortunate. You can see how close the drivers want to run it to the second part of the chicane of death as it claims another victim. It hasn't cost him too much time. It's cost him about 4 seconds at most, if you consider how much he was closing up. But that's something Stephen did not want, because now he's got to do all the work again to close up. That is unfortunate for the British driver. Meanwhile, looking up front here, Kamaru is holding on to the lead at this point. But remember, I think in terms of the drivers here, Balding probably knows or is thinking right now that Kamaru has got to go for that fuel stop at some point, whereas Balding has already taken on board the fuel. So Balding's probably just calm right now and just settling behind and making sure he doesn't give any inches towards G Rabbit, because Rabbit is the key factor here. Rabbit could, if he manages to get in front of Balding, whether Balding makes a mistake or Rabbit just decides to go for it, that could scamper Balding's race and give Kamaru the opportunity to win. So this is going to be really tight here between that top three. But it doesn't detract from the fact that Bubo Lubo running in fourth is only 5 seconds down the road from G Rabbit and 7 seconds off our leader. So don't forget about the Bulgarian driver. And then in fifth we've got Spooky Lukey, who's now made a clear run from Stephen and hit the Mac, has had to retire the car. That's very unfortunate. The mechanics have just called in to say that he's had to retire, so he will not be finishing the race. That is our first retirement of today. Unfortunate for the British driver in the Aston Martin, but I'm sure he'll come back in the next race fighting fit. Coming over to 7th then, meanwhile we've got JC, who's running a little bit of a lonely race here at the moment, with Murkov 5 seconds down the road. And from Murkov in 8th, we've got Bottle Job down the road in 7 seconds in 9th. And then Wilkinator 13 seconds behind in 10th. Wilkinator seems to have pulled away from Yules at this point, but I get the feeling there probably has been a pit stop for Yules, and that's why the gap has opened up to 14 seconds. So don't rule Yules out in terms of fighting against Wilkinator for the position here. But we're just flicking back up through the field once more. We've got JC here, we've got Stephen, Spooky Lukey, Bubo, G Rabbit, Balding and Kamaru. All the drivers coming charging through as always. And my goodness, it is one heck of a race so far. But it is settling down a little bit at this point, but we've just got to keep an eye on these three drivers. And of course, in races like this, things do spread out. And it's when you get to that final pit stop there, it all seems to concertina together. And all the drama, the tension starts to kick off once again. And we really need a breather right now, I think, folks, because this has been one frantic race. And there's been so much overtaking. And that's why everybody loves Dragon Trail Seaside, or the majority of drivers, because I'm sure there's some out there. As hold on a second, did Balding get it a little bit wrong there, coming out of turn 4 into 5 and down into 6, because it would appear that our driver in the Ferrari G Rabbit is very close behind here, and I get the feeling that he may be going for a move. We're going to look to the rear of Balding at this point as G Rabbit is going for the move here, and they're going to be coming down into the hairpin, and G Rabbit has got the pass. Oh goodness me, Balding's not going to be happy with that. Now of course Balding doesn't have to take the fuel on, but every second he loses behind G Rabbit in trying to pursue Kamaru here, he's got to remember that Kamaru may gain an advantage, and this could all play out in the final set of pit stops, because Kamaru will have to take on fuel as G Rabbit does, or we suspect they both will, whereas Balding's got a lot of fuel in that car, but now he's got to push it a little bit further. He's got to push the envelope, and you can see that Balding's tyres are quite heavily worn, whereas G Rabbit is on the softs, and this is what we were talking about earlier, folks. Those soft tyres, when they go deeper into a stint, although G Rabbit gets a little bit sideways under braking there into 16, those soft tyres come alive in the second half of a stint compared to the super softs that fade away. And G Rabbit has played a master plan so far with those soft tyres, and he's gaining on, you can see it, he's gaining on Kamaru. That gap has come down to 1.2 seconds. I reckon we've got an usurper here. The McLaren throne is being usurped by the Ferrari as Balding goes to look for a move into turn 2, but it's not quite there. But Balding is definitely wanting to get back past. He doesn't want to sit behind this Ferrari. He knows it's compromised his chances of being able to pull away an unassailable lead in the final part of the race. Goodness me, they're closing up and coming into turn 4 and then into 5 again. Are we going to see Balding try to go for a dummy into 5? No, he's keeping it directly behind the Ferrari at the moment, not trying to psych the Ferrari driver out. It's a tactic you can use. He would have been too far back to go for a lunge, and even then, if he did go for a lunge, it'd be very dangerous. But you can always just dip your nose out a little bit from the racing line to sort of say to the driver behind, notice me, I am coming for you. Of course here, the 3 mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars all running in sequence through the triple chicane. All drivers are going to be running as flat out as they possibly can, as we see sparks fly. Or was that gravel there off of Kamaru? I don't know, but it looked beautiful. And as they're coming down into turn 11, you can definitely see G Rabbit is on a charge. This is an opportunity to get ahead of Kamaru for sure, and then potentially go hunting after Balding for the race win with 17 minutes to go. It's closing up, and as they're coming through the chicane of death here for the 24th time of asking, we can see that G Rabbit is losing out a little bit compared to the straight line speed of the McLaren 650 as they go into the higher gears. That's the McLaren strength in the mid-engine rear-wheel drive class, whereas G Rabbit is really trying to push, and he's going to want to get as close as possible under braking here going through turn 16 and stay as tight as possible to the slipstream of the Kamaru in the McLaren, because he will want to be able to try and make a move into turn number 2. It's not happening so far, but we're just going to look backwards from Kamaru's car at this point in time. You can see Kamaru's just going a little bit side to side to try and break the toe as G-Rabbit puts some wheels on the grass there. It doesn't cost him too much time. And G-Rabbit is going to take a little sneaky peek as Bubo Lupo comes into the pits from fourth. So I get the feeling that he's going to try and go for a nice early stop using those softs as well. And is he going to switch to another set of softs? Well, let's forget about that for now because G-Rabbit is very close behind. And is he going to go for the move here into turn 4? And they go look into the inside, going into turn 4, and he doesn't quite get it. The door is shut, and G-Rabbit's on the grass, and Balding goes through into second place. Oh my goodness, we're going to need to see a replay of that. That was too close to call, and now it means Balding's up into second, chasing down Kamaru. Oh goodness me, but don't count the rabbit out yet. He's still going to be chasing after Balding and Kamaru as a furious hare would. And remember, at this point in the race, you don't want to be the tortoise, you want to be the hare, because you need to hunt those guys down, Mr. Rabbit. And JC meanwhile is in 5th place with Bubo Lupo behind him. That's not good for Bubo because Bubo's going to want to get past the Aston Martin driver who's clearly still coming to the end of the stint. And those super soft tyres, that front left is absolutely shredded, but he's trying to make it go as long as possible in order to try and literally have no fuel left in the car towards the end of the race because he's going to need to do his fuel stop soon. Murkov is right behind Bubo here. I get the feeling the two drivers are out of sync. Yep, definitely with Murkov being on an old set of tyres and needing to take fuel. But let's jump back towards the front with Kamaru leading the way right now. And then we've got Balding chasing after him and G-Rabbit chasing after Balding. Oh, goodness me, folks. It just doesn't stop. And meanwhile, Spooky Lukey's got a 0.1 second penalty. So there was a penalty earlier on. He's probably going to have to burn that penalty, probably for cutting track limits. We'll see if we can tell where he picked that up in a little bit. Meanwhile, Bottle Job is hounding after the back of Spooky Lukey at this point. Oh, goodness me. Oh, dearie me. And Bottle Job is really having to hound down Spooky Lukey at this point. And as I said earlier, it's not over for Bottle Job. He can still go charging after Spooky Lukey. But meanwhile, further down the field at this point, we've got Yules, who is being chased by the Wilkinator at this point, although there's a bit of a gap between the two drivers. And looking further down, so Wilkinator is our last runner at the moment, but don't count him out. There's a 35-second gap between Bottle Job and Yules. And we can see that JC, Murkov and Stephen have all pitted at this point. And my apologies. Yep, they've all pitted at this point. And Stephen is just waiting for the cameras to settle. Stephen has come out of the head of that pack and is up into 5th. I think he was 5th before the pit stop started happening, but he's now going to chase down Bubo. Spooky Lukey is chasing after Stephen. Goodness me, if I haven't seen someone drive that aggressively of a Jaguar before, I now have, because Spooky is really trying to shred the rubber on that car, and he's pushing that car to its utmost. So Bubo Lupo, meanwhile, holding on to 4th right now, 2 seconds up on Stephen, and really these two drivers are either going for the distance. There may be one last stop, although I get the feeling that Bubo is going to make those softs go to the very end of the race, and he's got the fuel to go to the end. Meanwhile, let's take a look to Stephen. We can see on that super soft, yep, he's going to the end, I think, or he's going to try to. He may have to make one more stop because of the super soft duration. Meanwhile, looking behind Spooky Lukey on the soft, yep, Lukey is definitely going to the end of the race at this point. And I don't think that's a penalty in Lukey's car anymore. I think that's a visual glitch. Let's see if we can fix that glitch. No, it's going to stay with us to the end. My apologies for that. Meanwhile, we've got Bottle Job coming down here on the super softs at the moment, but very low on fuel. I get the feeling Bottle Job will be pitting from 7th soon. Let's see if he's gained any places, having been in 9th before the pit stop started to occur there. Then we've got JC and Murkov fighting here. And JC was ahead of Murkov coming out of the pit. So it looks like Murkov's going for the move as they come down into turn 11 here. And JC defends to the inside. Can he hold on to it? They're going to go side by side here. And whilst JC is going to have the inside into 12, he's going to be on the outside into 13. Is Murkov going to stay there as they're giving each other space? No, Murkov has been sensible. He's backed out of it. And he's decided, right, I'm going to have you on the next lap rather than this lap. As he grazes the wall briefly, but the toe of the Aston Martin in front of him, plus the raw engine power of the Jaguar's V8, means that he's going to stay right behind the driver, and we're going to stay right with these guys because I reckon another attempt at a pass is coming up very shortly, as that gap is very small between the two drivers right now. And Murkov is really going for it. Whilst Murkov may not be racing as part of the championship this year, he's definitely showing he's got the skills to fight amongst the tier 2 drivers, and that's great to see. And hopefully in future seasons we'll see Murkov racing as part of this pack, because he's doing a fantastic job today. But for now, it seems as though he's fallen off a little bit. He's fallen a little bit back from JC, so we're just going to hop away from these guys for now. And Balding is out in front. Now, was there a pit stop, or has Kamaru just lost it through a mistake? We'll need to check that. No, Kamaru has made his pit stop, so this is important now, because remember, Balding did make his pit stop and took on the fuel to go to the end much earlier, but his tyres are a bit more worn now. Meanwhile, G-Rabbit is on the softs and has got the fuel to go to the end. And then we've got Kamaru on the super softs, who's now got the fuel to go to the end. So right now, this is the provisional finishing positions for the top three in the podium. Balding currently leading the way, leading by 6.2 seconds on G-Rabbit, who took on the fuel. So those two drivers did pit. We missed that off camera because we're focusing on action elsewhere, but that's why there's been a change in positions. But what we will hopefully see is that as time goes on, as we go deeper, so when we get to about the 5-minute remaining mark, you should see that Balding's tyres will start to show the signs of wear, whereas G-Rabbit's softs are going to last longer, and Kamaru's super softs will have a little bit more life in them compared to J Balding's, because Kamaru has been on his super softs for a significant shorter period of time. I get the feeling there's about a 3 to 4 lap difference between Balding's tyres and Kamaru's tyres at this point, and that's all going to play in. And at this point, Balding needs to manage that car. He needs to make sure those super softs can go to the end, because if he can make them last and just let the gap gradually trickle down over what is effectively going to be in the region of about another 6 to 7 laps as Bottlejob comes in from 7th to take probably his final pit stop of this race, then Balding could be the race winner here. Now we're just hopping over to Bottlejob as his pit crew go to work, taking on his fuel here, and meanwhile looking down the field. So we've got JC and Murkoff fighting again, and I get the feeling that Bottlejob is going to come out just behind these guys. And in fact, if you look to the left of your camera, you are going to see Bottlejob has just come out behind them. So Bottlejob is going to be in the fight for 7th if these guys spend a lot of time fighting. Oh, goodness me, there was a little bit of contact there between Murkoff. Oh, my apologies, folks. Between Murkoff and JC, but it was kept clean relatively. There was a bit of contact where JC clipped the curb in turn 1, and that bounced him out into the side of Murkoff into turn 2, but it was okay. Murkoff got the car back under control. There was no loss or gain there, and there was a little accident, no fault of JC's in terms of intention, just a little mistake, but it's all paid out okay in the end, and these two are still fighting for that 7th place, and I reckon we're going to see the Ford Mustang of Bottlejob creep up into this fight in due course. Now we're going to quickly flick through the field and just see if there's anything else happening right now in terms of drivers closing up. And it looks as though, right, Stephen has gained on Spooky Lukey, who in return has gained on Bubo Lubo. So we could be seeing a move here coming up into turn 16 or the start of lap 29 for these two drivers. We've got to keep an eye on them as they're going through the chicane of death for the 28th time of asking. My goodness, these drivers must be getting tired now, having gone through that chicane so many times. And this is where in these races, that tiredness factor starts to kick in. It's an endurance race. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And so far, these drivers coming deep into this race, as Spooky gets it a little bit locked up under braking there, and you can see that Stephen is really getting the most out of that McLaren, getting good driver for turn 16. I reckon a move's going to be on. But then again, Bubo didn't have the cleanest run out of turn 17, and it means that the three drivers are going to concertina down into turn 1. We're going to keep on the third person of Bubo Lubo here, so I think a set of moves are coming up. Bubo going to the inside. Spooky's able to get to the outside, and there's contact, but not too much. And Spooky goes around the outside. My goodness, man, you are brave going to the outside. You love doing that move. And Spooky, look up, it's into 4th, but it's not over yet because Bubo's going for the return through turn 4. Is he going to get the inside line as they go side by side, giving each other space and coming up into turn 5? Bubo's looking to the inside, but he hasn't got the overlay, and Spooky Lukey has made the move, but don't count Stephen out yet because Stephen's now going for the move into 6, but he's going to be on the outside into 7 as they go side by side. Goodness me, guys, give each other space. You're doing a fantastic job so far, and into 8, Bubo's holding on so far, but you can see how much this means to Stephen. He knows he can get 4th if he pushes it. So coming over the brow of the hill into turn 10 and then down into 11. Stephen's going to look to the inside, but Bubo's got it covered. And Stephen's going to look to the outside, but he throws a dummy. He does a net immense one PK from Silverstone in 94. And it means that Stephen is now passed into 5th. What a dummy. That was absolutely fantastic. Goodness me, but remember, it's not over yet because Bubo may want a second shot, and Stephen, whilst he's on those super softs right now, those softs of Bubo are going to kick in, and Spooky's hit the wall! He's hit the wall again! Oh no, not for the British Jaguar driver, and it drops him down into 6th! Goodness me, guys, I'm running out of voice. Can you calm it down a bit? Oh goodness me, it's calmed down. I think Stephen's just pulled a bit of a gap so far from Bubo in 5th, and then Spooky Lukey has dropped a bit down at this point. He's about 2 seconds off. Goodness me, 3 seconds off of Bubo, but it's not over yet. These guys are going to close up again. You know they're going to close up. But what fantastic racing from that trio. That was phenomenal. And I think that was the overtake of the race. When when Stephen managed to make the dummy on Bubo into turn 11. What a fantastic overtake, but Lukey must be feeling it right now. He's clipped that wall so many times over the duration of the race, and it's no criticism to him, but he must be getting frustrated. But to be fair to Lukey, 6th right now would be a good finishing position right in the middle of the pack, but I reckon he's still got a bit of fight in him, and he's going to be chasing down Bubo and Stephen as we get towards the end. Meanwhile, looking back to 7th, the pack here has closed up. JC is still holding on to 7th place with Murkov and Sir Bottlejob chasing him. These three have been at it for so long, and you know something's going to happen as we have only under 7 minutes remaining. And meanwhile, whilst everything else is a little bit spread out, we're just going to quickly hop to the front of the field. Nothing at the moment. Right, let's hop back to our 7th, 8th and 9th drivers. Looks like there might be a potential move between JC and Murkov very shortly if Murkov can get it nailed, as all the cars here are front engine rear wheel drive, so none of them's going to have an overall handling advantage through the triple chicane. The most planted one will be that Mustang, and you can see Bottlejob is really building up a lot of steam here, and we're just going to look rearwards off of the back of JC, and you can see Murkov is going to the outside there. He's not going for the move here, but just looking back, look how close they're getting. It's literally bumper to nose, and Bottlejob's going up the inside. Having seen Murkov broke a little bit early, we're just going to hop back to the third person. Will Bottlejob get the inside line into 12? Yes, he did, but he had to back out into 13. Sensible stuff there from the Mustang driver as they all charge around. Murkov's hit the wall! Murkov has hit the wall and he's dropped down into 9th. Another victim to the chicane. That's so unfortunate for the Jaguar driver, and that means Bottlejob is up into 8th, and JC can potentially make a breakaway in 7th right now. I think it's too much to ask to go chasing after Spooky Lukey in 6th, but JC has driven a fantastic race. All of the drivers have. We've got to give a round of applause to all of them by the end of the race, as Balding right now leading the way. In fact, we'll do a roll call in a minute. Let's just take a quick flick through and see what's happening down the field. No close action at the moment by looks of things. The drivers have spaced out relatively so. Wilkinator may be going for a move and Jules later in the race. We'll keep an eye on that. So, as we come to the midpoint of lap number 31, our leader at the moment is Jay Balding, 5.8 seconds up from G Rabbit in second in the Ferrari 458 GT Italia, GT4 I should say, who is 4.5 seconds ahead of Kumaru in third, the Norwegian driver running the McLaren 650S. Then in fourth we've got Stephen, who is, 13.5 seconds down the road. And then we've got Bubo Lubo 3 seconds down the road in 5th from Stephen. Then Spooky Lukey in 6th, who is 2.9 seconds off of the back of Bubo and charging after him. And you can see the rate of knots he's gaining on Lubo already. Goodness me, that gap is coming down. And then in 7th we've got JC, who's 14 seconds behind Spooky Lukey. And it's very close between JC and Bottlejob. And I think Bottlejob is really hunting down that 7th place. He smells blood in the water and he's going to go to it. But still, Bottlejob is 22 seconds ahead of Murkov, who's in 9th, having had that unfortunate incident at the chicane of death. So Murkov at this point is just going to have to drive it consistently home. And then in 10th, who's 32 seconds behind Murkov, is Jules SK. And last but not least is the Wilkinator. So far, in terms of our running drivers, we've got the Wilkinator in the Ferrari in 11th. We also had the retirement, unfortunately, of Hit the Mac. He retired about 6 to 7 laps ago. Very unfortunate there, but we're just going to flip back to our leader at this point, Jay Balding. And what we're going to do at this point, seeing as the pace has just calmed down a tiny bit, actually hold on a second, we might see a move going on here. We're going to actually stay with JC and Bottlejob because there's definitely fighting. And look at Bottlejob, he got a really nice launch there off of turn 16, and I think it's going to be side by side into turn 1 with Bottlejob having the inside line, but it will be on the outside to turn 2. But look at the horsepower of that Mustang. Look how he got that launch, and you can tell that's that 3rd and 4th gear of that Mustang really coming into fruition for Bottlejob as he's made the move before they've even got to turn 2. And at this point, JC's having to decide, does he want to go to the inside? And he looks to the inside. Bottlejob just starts to close the door, but gives him space if he decided to go for the overlap and the move. Fair racing for the two drivers there, my goodness. And I think we're going to see even more from the pair of them before the end of this race with only 3 minutes to go. So for them, it's probably going to be 2 laps remaining. I'm just going to take a quick sip of the water in case there's a grand finale here, folks. I'm sure there will be. Okay, so having taken a sip of water, and I bet a lot of these drivers are absolutely gagging for a drink right now. And honestly, after 58 minutes of almost 58 minutes of racing, it has been intense, and now nerves, tension, fear of losing your place, it's all going to come in. But it seems as though the only active fighting on the field at this point in time is definitely between 7th and 8th place. But that's no disrespect to our drivers, that's just how it's gradually flown. And JC has gone charging into the wall. What happened there? Goodness me, did he get it wrong under braking? We're going to have to find out. Let's go for a replay on that one. And it looks as though even our replay camera's bugged out. Apologies, folks. It's the technology. It just doesn't want to work today. Oh, goodness me. But I think what happened there was essentially that JC went very heavy under braking. And unfortunately, because he went very heavy under braking, as a result, he just went charging into the corner, broke a bit late, but he really just trying to gain that ground on Bottle Job. But Bottle Job has survived the pressure from JC, and I think that fight for 7th place has concluded. So with under 2 minutes to go at this point, at the moment, we see Jay Balding is leading by 5.7 seconds. G Rabbit hasn't really been able to close up that gap. I think those soft tyres have hit their cliff. Whereas if we look back to Balding with super softs, both tyres are roughly in the same state right now. Balding is going to be feeling quite a bit of pressure off of that front left in particular, but in return, it would seem that Rabbit is also feeling quite a bit of continental drift in the rear tyres of that Ferrari. What with the rear of that car being very loose when tyre wear's a factor, and you can see it there under braking, goodness me, literally sliding into the apex of turn 11. That Ferrari is going to need to be nursed to the end of the race by Rabbit, and I think he's got the space to do so with Kamaru 3 seconds behind, albeit Kamaru is pushing, but at the same time has to look after the tyres now. Those super softs are starting to fall off. And then jumping further down the field, we do have Stephen here, as I believe Balding is going to come across the line very shortly to start the final lap. So we're just going to hop back down to full. So Stephen in fourth with 5 seconds over Bubo Lubo. And then in 6th, we've got Spooky Lukey, who's 9 seconds back, and then 10 seconds to Sir Bottle Job. Although Spooky Lukey seems to have got it wrong somewhere, because that gap is coming down very fast. And let's see if we can definitely get a replay on that. No, we definitely can't. Replay camera is completely gone, folks. Unfortunately, technical issues, but you've still got the master camera here, and I reckon Spooky Lukey's probably had an accident or something going through the triple chicane, because that gap has come down significantly over the space of a couple of corners, which isn't natural, as Bottle Job goes through the chicane of death for the 33rd time of asking. So, Balding is on the final lap at this point, and further down the field, we've got JC who's chasing after Bottle Job, but there's a long gap there. Unless there's any mistakes, I think the field has separated out enough now, guys, that unfortunately we're not going to see too much fighting here. It's only going to be if somebody makes a mistake. So I think with that, we have a couple of seconds remaining. Our first quote-unquote finishers will be DRC JC. He's going to come across the line after 33 laps, finishing in what will be 8th position. Well done to JC. Yep, and then we're going to have Murkoff coming across the line, our number 9 driver here in terms of position at the moment, finishing after 33 laps. Congratulations to our guest driver today. Had a great load of fighting, and I'm sure that his brother, when he watches back this race, who was racing in Tier 3 tonight, Rocker, would be proud. And I think Murkoff can definitely pat himself on the back and think that today he's done himself and also the memory of his nan proud, and he should be pleased with the result. And then coming down for 10th then, Jules SK, I believe the Slovakian driver who's racing under a British flag here, but I think Jules is Slovakian. Actually, no, my apologies, I've got that wrong there. I'm thinking of somebody else. But Jules is coming across the line in 10th, and then we've got Will Kanator coming across in 11th to complete the back end of the field. Nobody has been lapped, I should point out, but your race winner after 34 laps is JJ Balding by 5.8 seconds. Congratulations to the McLaren driver, fantastic driving by them, but also credit too to our second place finisher G Rabbit in the Ferrari 458. Well done to them, very interesting strategy, and it paid off. And then Kamaru 75, our Norwegian driver, finishing in 3rd, and now we've got Stephen 2570, the 3rd of our leading McLaren drivers in the 650S, coming across the line in 4th. And Stephen, whilst he didn't have the perfect race today, again a fantastic drive by Stephen, skidding across the line. And then Bubo Lubo, another McLaren driver here, coming across in 5th. You can see all the drivers love to weave across the line here. Well done to Bubo. Spooky Lukey, the Jaguar driver and the fan favourite here, had a very strong start, but unfortunately it didn't quite pay off with some inconsistencies. But still, I think Spooky will be happy with this one and will take the momentum into the next race. But last of our crosses the line on the 34th lap will be in 7th place, Sir Bottle Job. Fantastic drive by the Mustang driver, who actually undercut a good chunk of the field through his consistency. And that is the conclusion of the race. And we can see, once again, the victory goes to JJ Balding. Back-to-back victories. What a race, ladies and gentlemen. It was action all the way through the field throughout, I should say. And goodness me, it was fantastic. But what we did get to see there was the difference in strategy between the drivers, particularly with the super soft lasting for a shorter period of time, but having that natural pace advantage in a short window. But our soft drivers, particularly Bubo Lubo and also who was it in the Ferrari? It was G Rabbit. We should keep in mind they did a very good job on their softs, and those stints really paid off and brought them into the mix. So different strategies there. It all came together and made for an absolutely brilliant race. And of course, the venue, we've got to say thank you to our creation host. Fantastic venue with its wide space out on track, meaning there's plenty of fighting, minus the chicane of death, of course, because it's too narrow through there. But what great racing had by all. And I have been your host, Paul Walsh, or TX141, or Brit in the Spit. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all the best. Stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and stay tuned for round number 5 in a week's time. Take care.